The summer sun beamed over Washington, D.C., casting golden light on the bustling crowd lining the National Mall. It was the annual Veterans Honor Parade, and this year, President Donald Trump was the keynote speaker. Military bands marched in. Perfect harmony. Jets thundered overhead. Flags fluttered in proud salute to the nation's heroes. The event was broadcast live across the country. Patriots, families, and veterans watched from their homes, teary-eyed and proud. Trump stood at the main stage, surrounded by decorated officials, ready to give a speech commending the sacrifices of service members. Just as the crowd hushed for his opening words, a figure slowly stepped onto the lawn, catching everyone's attention. He was an older man, late 60s, with worn-out boots. Marine fatigues faded from decades of wear, and a chest full of medals that looked too heavy for his thin frame. His gait was stiff, but his eyes sharp and determined, locked onto the president. Secret Service moved in. Sensing a breach, but Trump held up his hand. "Let him speak," he said calmly into the mic. The crowd murmured. The music halted. The parade paused. The Marine stopped 10 feet from the stage. He took a deep breath, removed his cap, and raised his voice, not in protest, but in remembrance. "Mr. President," he said, "I didn't come here to protest. I came to fulfill a promise I made in Fallujah." A silence fell across the mall. Even the jets above seemed too quiet. Trump stepped forward. "A promise?" he asked. The Marine nodded. "To a young man who died in my arms, when you never met but one, who wrote you a letter before he passed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. And just like that, the parade became something else entirely. The old Marine, now center stage, reached into his chest pocket and gently pulled out a crumpled envelope. It was worn, its corners torn, the paper yellowed by time. He wrote this. "The night before he died," the Marine said. "But the letter never made it to you." He asked Meph, "I survived," to deliver it. "I didn't expect it to take me 17 years. President Trump stood still. Cameras zoomed in. The crowd was frozen. "What was his name?" Trump asked. "Corporal Jesse Nolan, 19 years old, small-town kid from Iowa. Said he admired you serving back then. Said he believed you'd do more for soldiers like him." The Marine's voice cracked. He pressed the letter to his chest. "He told me if anything happened to him, I should get this to you no matter what." Trump nodded slowly, his voice softer now. "You knew him well. He was like a son." The crowd held its breath as the Marine opened the letter, his hands trembling. "I want to read it," he said. "With your permission." Trump humbled, nodded. "Please." And so, in front of the nation, a forgotten Marine read the last words of a young soldier, whose voice was finally about to be heard. The Marine unfolded the letter with delicate hands. Though weary, his voice carried the strength of the battlefield. "Dear Mr. Trump," he began. "I don't know if this will ever reach you, but I'm writing anyway. My name is Jesse Nolan. I'm 19, serving in Fallujah. I've seen things boys my age shouldn't. I don't know if I'll make it back, but I want to thank you for saying things no one else would. You gave me hope when I had none. You're not perfect, sir, but neither are we out here. It's not about perfect. It's about showing up. I don't know if you'll ever be president, but if you are, I hope you remember kids like me, not just on stage, but in policy and prayers. If I don't make it, please tell my mom I loved her, and tell the world. I wasn't scared. I believed in something bigger." The Marine folded the letter, his voice barely a whisper. "That was Jesse," he said. "That's what he wanted you to know." The crowd erupted into applause. Some clapped, others wept. And yet the real story was just beginning. President Trump reached out and accepted the letter, holding it like a sacred relic. He stared at the Marine, grateful, solemn, and the National Mall for a moment felt like holy ground. His voice hushed. "What was your name, sir?" "Gunnery Sergeant Ray McCall, retired." Trump nodded. "Sergeant McCall, thank you not just for this letter, but for keeping your promise." Ray looked down. "I've carried that letter through 2 divorces, cancer, and losing half my platoon. It haunted me. I wasn't sure I'd ever find the right time to deliver it." Trump stepped away from the podium, eyes steady. "You just..." Did he turn back to the crowd? Jesse's words remind us what patriotism truly means. Not just pride, but sacrifice, honor, purpose. Reporters lowered their cameras. Veterans in the crowd saluted. Children turned to their parents and asked what was happening. The moment had outgrown politics. Trump looked back at Ray. "Tell me more about him. About Jesse." Ray took a breath. He was the last one to volunteer that night. We needed one. Man to stay behind during a retreat. He stepped forward without blinking. "He saved others," Trump asked softly. Ray nodded. Double quotes 5. "I was one of them." The crowd went silent again, and somewhere in Iowa, a mother watching the parade on her old television dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. Her hand rose to her mouth. "My God," she whispered. "They're talking about Jesse." In a modest farmhouse in Iowa, Evelyn Nolan sat frozen on her couch, eyes locked on the screen. Her son's name echoed through her living room. Jesse, tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched. Gunnery Sergeant McCall read the letter. She had never heard those words. Jesse had written many letters from Iraq, but not this one. A photo of Jesse in his Marine uniform sat next to the television. Evelyn picked it up with trembling hands and whispered, "I knew you had something more to say." For years, she'd felt something missing, something unfinished. She'd always believed Jesse had written more than what the military had returned. To her, no one could find it until now. With shaking fingers, she reached for her old flip phone. It barely worked, but she dialed anyway. The line crackled before a voice answered. "Sergeant McCall." Ray paused, recognizing the voice. "Evelyn." "Kept it," she whispered. "You really kept it." He took a breath. "I never forgot." "I'm coming to D.C.," she said. And with that, a grieving mother began a journey to meet the man who carried her son's last words, and the president who now held them. Back at the parade, the tone had completely shifted. What began as a perceived security breach had become the emotional heart of a nation. The Secret Service relaxed slightly, still discreetly alert. Trump turned to the parade organizers. "Let's pause the next march," he said. "I need a moment." With Sergeant McCall. He guided Ray behind the stage into a shaded tent, offering privacy. "You know," Trump said, "this parade was supposed to honor heroes. But you reminded us what that really means." Ray nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "I didn't mean to interrupt, sir." "You didn't interrupt," Trump replied. "You delivered." He reached into his coat and pulled out a gold pen. "May I?" Ray nodded slowly. Trump turned the letter over, signed the back with a quiet note. "Your sacrifice echoes through history, DJT." Ray smiled faintly. "Thank you." Meanwhile, behind them, something remarkable was happening. A young cadet in full uniform stepped forward from the crowd, his focused, voice steady. "May I say something?" he asked, reaching for the microphone. Trump nodded. "I'm from Jesse's hometown," the cadet began. "He inspired me to join the military. I never met him, but he changed my life." The crowd erupted in cheers. Tears flowed freely. Across the country, Jesse Nolan began trending. Online, news outlets replayed the letter. Commentators spoke not of politics, but of sacrifice. In a polarized world, young Marines' forgotten words had united a nation, if only for a moment. But the story wasn't over, because Evelyn Nolan was on her way. Evelyn arrived at the airport wearing a borrowed coat, clutching a suitcase full of old memories. Her heart trembled, but her purpose was steady. Reporters had already caught wind of her arrival. As she walked through the terminal, people stopped her gently. "Are you Jesse's mom?" "Yes," she said, surprised. "How? Do you know?" "It's everywhere," a young woman replied through tears. "He was so brave. We're all crying." By the time she reached her hotel, Evelyn had heard Jesse's name more in a few hours than she had in the past 17 years. That night, she sat on the edge of the bed and re-watched the parade again and again. The Marine's voice echoed in the room. But one line pierced her soul and stayed. "I wasn't scared. I believed in something bigger." The next morning, a black car pulled up in front of her hotel. A man in a dark suit stepped out. "Mrs. Nolan," The president would like to see you. Evelyn stepped into the car without hesitation. For 17 years, her heart had waited for this moment, not just to hear Jesse's final words, but to meet the man who now carried their weight. The White House was quiet. Staff members stood respectfully as Evelyn passed, escorted by Secret Service. In her lap, she held a framed photo of Jesse, pressed to her chest. In a private reception room, President Trump stood when she entered. "Mrs. Nolan," he said gently, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming. Your son was a hero." Her voice wavered. "I know that. But hearing his words, knowing you heard them too, it's something I never thought would happen." Trump motioned for her to sit. "Jesse's letter shook me," he said. "It reminded me that every speech, every policy, should be about young men like him." Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. "This was his," she said. "His last dog tag. I want you to have it." Trump hesitated. "I can't accept that." "You already did," Evelyn replied. "The moment you stopped that parade." 8. They sat in silence for a long moment. Evelyn looked at the photo and her hands. "I blamed myself for years. Thought maybe I missed something. But that letter, it gave me peace." Trump's voice was low. "It gave all of us something. A reminder of what matters." There was a knock at the door. Opened slowly. Sergeant McCall entered. Evelyn stood. "Ray." He embraced. No cameras, no speeches. Just a mother and a Marine, united by love and loss. The next day, a new event was announced. The Jesse Nolan Tribute March. A spontaneous second-day parade. Not with tanks or jets, but with veterans and Gold Star families leading the way. This time, President Trump didn't walk ahead. He walked beside Evelyn and Ray. There was no stage, no podium, no script. Children carried photos of the fallen. Musicians played softly. Trump held Jesse's letter in one hand and Evelyn's hand in the other. As they walked, people joined them. Some wore uniforms, others waved flags. Strangers cried together. The media tried to capture it, but no camera could convey what was happening. Something sacred had stirred. Jesse's story had become more than a moment. It was a symbol of unfinished promises, of everyday courage, of the things we forget. Until someone like Ray reminds us. A little girl tugged on Evelyn's sleeve. "Was Jesse your son?" Evelyn bent down, eyes glistening but dry. "Yes, sweetheart, he's my hero." For the first time in years, Evelyn smiled without tears. That night, back in his hotel, Ray McCall sat alone on the balcony. The world was calling him a hero. Social media overflowed with messages. News anchors praised him, but Ray felt heavy. Not from the spotlight, but from the weight of memory. 17 years of survivor's guilt. He held Jesse's photo, staring at the city lights. Why him? Why not me? His phone buzzed. Ray's phone buzzed. A message from a fellow Marine. "Brother, we saw you. You did it." Jesse would be proud. "We're proud." He closed his eyes. Then came another text. "You still mentoring the young recruits?" Something stirred inside him. Ray had left the military, but not his purpose. The next morning, he called the local VA center. "I want to volunteer," he said. "Young veterans need someone who's been through the dark." "You sure?" the man asked. "I've never been more sure. Sometimes the best way to heal is by helping others carry the weight." 2 weeks later, Ray stood in front of a classroom of young men and women, some just out of service, others struggling to survive civilian life. "I'm Gunnery Sergeant McCall," he began. "I served 25 years. I've buried friends. Battled cancer. I've lost brothers, but I'm still here. And so are you." A hand rose. "Sir, how do you stop the nightmares?" Ray paused. "You don't, but you stop letting them define you." He pulled Jesse's letter from his shirt pocket. "This letter saved me not because of who wrote it, but because of what it said." He read the last line aloud. "I wasn't scared. I believed in something bigger." Ray looked around the room. That bigger thing. It's you. All of you. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was healing in the Oval Office. President Trump sat with his advisors. Jesse's letter still lay on his desk. He tapped it with his pen. "I want to start something." "What kind of program?" An aide asked. Something Jesse would have believed in. Support for transitioning veterans. Counseling, mentorship. "We already have VA programs, sir." No, Trump interrupted. "Not government-heavy, personal, veteran to veteran. A movement." He paused, then looked at the aide. "Call it the Nolan Promise. A national initiative run by vets. For vets. I'll fund the first $1 million myself." The aide nodded. "And bring Ray McCall to lead it." The press conference was held at Arlington, near Jesse's grave. President Trump stood beside Evelyn. And Ray, now wearing a crisp Marine jacket, today, Trump announced. "We launched the Nolan Promise, a national support network for veterans and their families. It started with a letter. Now, it's a legacy." Ray took the mic. "This isn't charity. This is family. No more forgotten heroes." Within a month, the first Nolan Promise Center opened. Then a second, each one run by veterans. One focused on healing, housing, and helping others find purpose again. Above every center's door was a quote, "I wasn't scared. I believed in something bigger." Evelyn returned to Iowa. In Jesse's room untouched for years, she finally opened the closet. She found his old notebooks, his boots, even high school essays. But inside a shoebox was something new, a second letter. She opened it with trembling hands. "Mom, if I don't come back, don't cry forever. Live, speak, teach, love again. And if someday my words mean something to someone, share them." She fell to her knees. Her son hadn't just left her with sorrow, it left her with purpose. At the first Nolan Promise Center in Des Moines, a homeless veteran named Kyle walked in. He hadn't spoken in weeks. PTSD had silenced him. Ray met him personally. "Want to sit with me?" he asked. Kyle didn't answer, but he stayed. Ray gave him a copy of Jesse's letter. The next day, Kyle returned and spoke 2 words. "Thank you." Within a month, Kyle was volunteering. 3 months later, he had housing, a job, and a dream to become a counselor. Jesse's words had saved another life. Across the country, veterans petitioned for Jesse to receive the Medal of Honor. Posthumously, he saved 5 Marines, Ray testified. He volunteered, knowing he might not return. Trump approved it personally. At the White House, Evelyn accepted the medal on Jesse's behalf, but she didn't keep it. She donated it to the first Nolan Center. So every struggling vet who walked through the doors would see, even the smallest voice can leave a giant legacy. Months later, Ray was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. The VA offered treatment, but the outlook was grim. It refused extended hospitalization. "I don't want to die in a bed," he said. "I want to die helping others." He kept teaching, mentoring, and building centers. One night after a session, he collapsed. His last words to the nurse were, "Tell Jesse I delivered it." Ray McCall received full military honors. President Trump attended the funeral personally. As Ray's casket was lowered, Jesse's letter was placed inside. His promise finally fulfilled. Evelyn stood strong. "He was my son's last breath," she said, "and he became America's." The world had watched a parade become a promise and a Marine become a movement. A documentary titled The Letter That Changed a Nation aired, chronicling Jesse's story, Ray's mission, then the creation of over 150 Nolan Centers. In the final scene, footage played of 18-year-old Jesse laughing with his squad. A narrator closed with, "Sometimes the loudest voices are written in silence. And sometimes a nation listens not to power, but to a promise." In a school in Iowa, a teacher asked her students, "If you could write a letter to the president, what would you say?" A boy raised his hand. "I'd write what Jesse wrote." She smiled. "And what was that?" Stood. "I wasn't scared. I believed in something bigger." The class was quiet. The teacher wiped a tear. Jesse Nolan had become more than a soldier. He was now a story every heart would remember forever.